Welcome everyone to tonight's Brampton Tech Talk on breaking bias in tech hiring. Brampton Tech Talks are a regular series jointly presented by Brampton Library and the City of Brampton Economic Development. My name's Erin. I'm the Makerspace and Digital Literacy Librarian at Brampton Library. And my co-host this evening is Zaim Siddiqui, who's the Educational Programs Coordinator at the City of Brampton. So thank you very much for joining us this evening, and I hope everyone is keeping safe and well. A few housekeeping notes. If you require closed captioning, you can access live transcription from the Zoom controls at the bottom of the Zoom panel. Tonight's session is being recorded and will be posted to the Brampton Library's YouTube channel at a later date. Everyone has been muted automatically, and there will be time for question and answers during tonight's talk. Feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and Zaim and I will field those during the question and answer portion of this evening. And there will also be an opportunity for you to unmute and come on camera if you wish. To launch this evening's program, I'd like to acknowledge that Brampton is located on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. As I mentioned, Brampton Tech Talks is a series that we run, co-hosted by Brampton Library and the City of Brampton. Of course, we want to keep the conversation and the connections going between these meetups. So I would invite you to join our meetup page where we post information about other events that we're hosting, as well as other Tech Talks. And we also invite you to join the Brampton City Slack channel to connect with others in the local Brampton tech and innovation community. And I believe Zaim's going to pop those links into the chat for you so you have easy access to them. And lastly, before we introduce tonight's featured speaker, we do have a guest joining us. Roxana is the admissions and recruitment specialist at the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst, and she's here tonight to talk briefly about the accelerated cybersecurity training program. So Roxana, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to pass the floor over to you. I believe you did have some slides you wanted to bring up, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I'll keep this short and sweet, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to your guests tonight. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. There we go. Okay, so as mentioned, my name is Roxana, and I am the admissions and recruitment specialist at the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at Ryerson University. And the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst, just to give you a bit of background, is a not-for-profit corporation that is owned by Ryerson University, and we are based in Brampton. We're actually located in Brampton City Hall. And our purpose is to educate Canadians and Canadian companies on how to tackle the challenges of cybersecurity. Canada is currently facing a very large cybersecurity skills shortage. And the Accelerated Cybersecurity Training Program was designed to train and certify individuals so that we can address that skills shortage in Canada. So our program is a 7-month intensive cybersecurity training and certification program, and is designed to give students the skills they need to launch entry-level careers in cybersecurity. So essentially, it's a rapid workforce development program, and in just 7 months, you can be trained and certified and ready to be employed in an entry-level role in cybersecurity. Moreover, the program is fully online, so if you are working, you are still able to do the program. It does, however, have 3 weeks of mandatory virtual class time, but the rest is self-study on your own time. The cost of the program is only $500. So through the generous partnership of the Government of Canada, Rogers Communications, and the Royal Bank of Canada, we are able to offer this program at almost no cost. The value of the program per student comes out to about $25,000. So it is an amazing program at almost no cost, and it will get you employment ready for a role in cybersecurity in just 7 months. We have 3 cohorts per year, February, June, and October. And currently we're recruiting for our October 2021 cohort. So all of the information about the program, the application process is on our website, as well as program start dates, application deadlines, etc. So I do encourage you to visit our website, which will be available in just a few short slides. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that our program is in partnership with the SANS Institute. So SANS is the world's leading cybersecurity training organization. And throughout the program, students will have the opportunity to earn 3 industry certifications, which is what employers are looking for when hiring cybersecurity talent. So the 3 certifications that our students receive are the GIAC Foundational Cybersecurity Technology Certification, the GIAC Security Essentials Certification, and the GIAC Certified Incident Handler Certification. These certifications, if taken on their own with SANS and GIAC, can cost about $7,000 per course. And through our program, you're getting it at almost no cost. And finally, the GIAC certifications provide employers with the highest assurance of cybersecurity knowledge and skills and are listed as the preferred qualifications on thousands of job postings worldwide. We have 4 streams that we admit students into. So if you meet the eligibility for one of these streams, then you can apply to the program. So the first stream, which is available for October 2021, is the Peel Region Young Workers stream. And this is open to anyone who lives in the Peel region and is between the ages of 18 to 30 and is either unemployed, working only part-time, or underemployed. Then we have a women's stream, which is open to anyone who identifies as female. We also have a new careers stream, and this is open to anyone who has lost their job in the last 36 months and has not been able to obtain another full-time position since then. And finally, we have the new Canadian stream. So this stream is specifically for newcomers who have been in Canada for at least 2.5 years and have not been able to find full-time employment that aligns with their education and their skills. So the information on these streams in more detail are on our website. To apply to the program, you do need to be either Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or convention refugee. You have to be at least 18 years of age and have a high school diploma, but that is the minimum academic requirement, is just a high school diploma. And another thing to note is that you cannot be enrolled in another academic program while you're doing our program. And just to tell you what types of roles our program prepares you for. So as I mentioned, it prepares you for entry-level roles in cybersecurity. So the most typical one is a security operations center analyst and a cybersecurity analyst. So these are the 2 most common roles that our students get hired into upon graduation. These are some other ones that our students have been hired into. So security consultant, threat content analyst, cyber intelligence analyst, along with other ones, of course. Our program so far has an 80% employment rate. So our cohort that just graduated in June, 61% of them are already employed and they just graduated 3 weeks ago. So we have a very high employment rate. We work with many big employers such as Rogers, Samsung, Arctic Wolf, City of Toronto, Queen's University, Herjavec Group, BMO, IBM, Deloitte, the government, of course, RBC, Enbridge, and many, many more. So we not only train and certify our students, but we also help them find employment in cybersecurity. That is the mandate of the program, to graduate 160 students a year and then find them employment in cybersecurity. So if you know anybody that would be eligible for one of those streams, if you yourself are eligible for one of those streams and have a passion for technology, have considered a career in cybersecurity, or just want to learn more, please visit our website, follow us on social media, or attend one of our information sessions, which can be found in the events section of our website. And that's it for me. Kept it nice and short, I hope. I will stop sharing. And I see the chat going. I don't know if those are questions for me or there are questions for me. Should I read them myself or someone monitoring the chat? Oh.
Same, would you be able to address any questions for Roxana?
Sure. We have a question about opportunities for high school students.
So not through the accelerated cybersecurity training program, although we do provide resources on our website for K to 12, so resources on cybersecurity. And sometimes we do run summer camps for high school students, which includes something called the Cyber Start Game, which is a competition on cybersecurity games. And then there's a prize for the person that gets the most points throughout the summer.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And all of these can be found on the websites.
Yes. Yeah. All of our information are on the website, and again, happy to speak through email if people want to email us at catalysttraining@ryerson.ca. But easiest is to just go to our website. That's it. Thank you so much.
Right.
And I will pass it over to Mo.
All right. Thank you, Roxana. I'm just going to go back to my slide deck here. All right. So thank you so much. I hope those in the audience tonight will explore this further and again, go to the website like you recommended. All right. I think the time has come for us to introduce tonight's featured speaker, which is Moe Nazariha from VP of Talent from Global Skills Hub. Mo has spent most of his career building high-performing teams and products to solve real-world problems, and he has dealt with his fair share of hiring pains. He's now on a mission to bring 10,000 world-class tech talents to fast-growing Canadian startups and scale-ups looking to build a diverse team of exceptional minds. So Mo, welcome to Brampton Tech Talks. Very much looking forward to what you have to share with us this evening, and I'll hand the virtual baton over to you at this point.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Is my voice okay? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm gonna try and share the slides. 1 second. Okay, can you see it?
Looking great.
Okay, great. So hello everyone. Thank you for having me. I mean, my name is Mo. You already heard a little bit about me. I think that's enough. But today I wanted to talk about bias in particular and how it impacts tech recruitment, the industry that I'm involved with, and probably affects the careers of a lot of people, whether they're starting or maybe they're shifting or they're already in the tech sector. So I think it's an important topic, and we want to talk a little bit about what bias is, how does it impact the recruitment process, what does it mean for teams, and a little bit of advice maybe in there for job seekers that want to kind of have a peek into the process. Trying to move to the next slide. There we go. Okay, I think we have a poll ready. Would you like to?
We do. I can launch that for you right now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we've got a poll here, a bunch of questions, nothing too fancy, just to get everyone warmed up. And okay, I see results. I see a couple of people are totally pumped. That's great. Someone's excited, not too pumped. Okay, that's fine. I feel ya. Let's see, what other results do we have? Okay. Oh, I can't see other results for some reason, but I guess that's because people are still in the first question, I'm guessing.
Would you like to move to the next question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely.
Right.
Let's go to the next question.
We can share the results.
Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah, everyone's totally pumped. That's great. Let's go to the next question.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, just wanted to get a feel of, are you looking to hire? Are you looking for a job? Does that not even apply to you? I think that's an important question to know. It affects how you're looking at this. Helps me kind of see where I should take the direction of the conversation. Okay. Ooh, okay. 60% looking for a job, although our sample size isn't that big, but anyway. And the next question. Oh, there we go. Okay. Nature of your work. So are you in tech, operations, sales, other? I oversimplified. I'm sorry if it doesn't include what you feel like is the nature of your work, but it's kind of a startup-y way of looking at roles. That's just the way we work. Great. Okay, we've got good balance of technical, ops, and some other stuff, which is great. Perfect. I think we're done with our questions. All right, so let's get started with a little bit about me. I mean, you've already heard what you need to hear about me, but just to kind of reiterate, I definitely identify as an immigrant. I'm an immigrant. My family's an immigrant. I think most of my friends and people I work with are immigrants as well. I also consider myself a little bit of a nomad, so I like traveling and kind of staying in places for a while and working out of there. I've had a lot of, throughout my career, I've kind of stumbled upon the world of recruitment a few years ago and have had the pleasure of placing hundreds of tech talent across high performing teams in Canada and Europe, and mainly developers have been the kind of people I've been interacting with. But that has taught me a lot. I've gained a lot of insight and learned so much from these people, whether they were looking for a job or whether they were looking to hire someone. It's just given me a lot of insight, and it's been an incredible journey. And I've liked it so much that now we've committed to this mission of 10,000 smart, talented people, world class, bringing them to Canada and making sure that we find them the right opportunity, the right place for them. And there's a lot that goes into that, and you'll kind of have a peek into that when we go further into the conversation. But before we do, and kind of go deeper into the process, I think the first thing is to think a little bit about what bias is. What does it mean? And I think the main point to think about is, how does it affect your life? How does it affect your work? How does it affect your personal life? And I would like to ask everyone if they could type in what word comes to your mind when you think of bias. What is the first word that comes to your mind? Is it something negative? Is it something positive? Do you know some unconscious biases that you've heard of, maybe you've learned of, you've experienced in your own workflows in your personal life? So I want to see can I see the chat? I'm sure I can. Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Stereotypes, discrimination, unconscious. Okay. Okay. Good words. Good words. I think they make sense. Anything else? No one else in the audience? All right, great. So there's a lot of definitions for bias. I mean, there's so many ways to look at it. It could be positive. It could be negative. It could be conscious. It could be unconscious. But at the end of the day, bias is an inclination of the mind. Or basically even an opinion, a strong opinion, a preconceived opinion about something, and in our case, someone. And that's important because it affects so many things in the way we work and in our processes and the way we select candidates or we select jobs even. And to kind of make sense of this, I found this really cool map used usually in product design, whether you're designing algorithms or you're designing user interfaces. It kind of maps out all the different, well, not all of them, but most of the different biases that the human mind kind of faces in different situations. And I put this here because I feel it really sheds light on why all these biases exist in the recruitment process. And I think it's an important thing to consider if you're a job seeker, or even if you're hiring, to be aware of what is contributing to the biases that exist in your process. And when you look at this, I mean, there's so much here to look at. This just kind of drives me nuts, just knowing that, okay, all these different patterns are recognizable, and they're common manipulations that my brain can play. And but there's always themes, and that's what's interesting. So common themes are, for example, there's just too much information. There's too much information for me to process. I don't want to, or I can't process all of it. And I want to be able to make some kind of sense out of that. And so what your brain usually does is it figures out ways to shortcuts, right? It figures out shortcuts and finds a way to notice something. So it says, okay, it's easier for me to, for example, notice differences between people when put side by side, or lists. Or for example, another theme is I look at information and I don't know how to make sense out of it. There's just information sitting in front of me, but I can't figure out how they piece together. So I come up with a story. I come up with some kind of, I don't know, rhetoric or something that kind of helps me find a pattern, identify one, even build one, imagine one. And you can go all the way with this and see what kind of things come out of just this piece, but it's super interesting. And it's not just this, it's sometimes just like, okay, maybe the information makes sense and all that, but I need to act fast. I'm under time pressure. I need to make a quick decision. And in those times, you want to avoid mistakes because you don't have enough time to think about the consequences. And you're under time pressure. You have to get some kind of result. So you kind of group things, you simplify them, you put them in lists. You try to, or even just like completing a project that you've already put energy into because you feel like, okay, if I get to this and I finish this, I'm going to get a result faster. And also finally, you see another theme about things where you're struggling to remember things. And the way the human memory works is pretty fascinating, but it really depends on your experience. Actually, it's tied to emotions. Sometimes we ignore certain memories because we don't, for the better, or sometimes for the worse, and we get selective with it. So I want you to picture all these and think, okay, how does this apply to recruitment? Well, it's actually everything about recruitment is right here, because it's such a selective process, and it's, time pressure is built in. Companies don't have long-term plans for hiring. Most of them don't. I rarely see them. Usually it's, okay, we've raised a round of funding, or we've signed this major client with a big project, or something crazy has happened in the market and we need to expand our team. And we have a deadline and we need people, we need them fast. And so it's really hard to predict for the capacity that you need to fill. And so what happens is, you get these crazy stats like recruiters spend 6 seconds or less per resume, and they're not a lie. I mean, depends on the role and depends on how many resumes you have, but it's not far from the truth. And combine this with the sheer number of activities that you need to do. Average number of applicants per job is around 250 for each position. Most in-house recruiters, which would be probably what you would be dealing with the most, have about 30 open requisitions that they're dealing with at a time on average. Some less if the position is more complex or higher level, but still it doesn't mean that it's any less work. And so you can imagine this is all, and everything we're talking about is just in the screening process. You haven't even gotten to interviews yet. You're just talking about, okay, I have a bunch of jobs. I have 30 jobs, get 250 applicants per job, and now I have to go through all of them. And so imagine the time pressure and the amount of decisions you have to make in order to come to a short list of candidates that you want to kind of proceed and move forward with. And that is why you can't remove bias from recruitment. It's going to play It's going to play its role, and you need to figure out what are the ways that you can limit it, you can control it, or at least have the ones that are actually that you're conscious of. And these challenges that recruiters face mean that they have to make those quick decisions, and sometimes making quick decisions are not necessarily the best ones. So, for example, there's some interesting stats that I came across. So, one was study has been done that candidates with white names, white sounding names, whatever you call that, are 50% more likely to get called for a second interview. And I've seen this not only in recruitment. Actually, one of my buddies, he's in sales in an incredibly great company, growing super fast. He's really well. He's a veteran, he's a senior, and he knows his stuff. And he actually tested this with a campaign. He was running the same material, the same messaging across two different, sales outreach campaigns, same type of leads from the same kind of source. And he experimented. He used one he did with his own name, which is kind of Middle Eastern sounding, and one he did with a completely, white name. And I remember that day he called me and he was like, "Mo, I'm shocked. I can't believe this. I've been working in this industry for so long, and something like this has such a massive effect on my results." And that really actually spiraled into this big thing for him. And I completely understand the challenge. This person, he relies on being able to get people to interact, and his name is a barrier. And I think that's crazy. Or there's other funny stats that I saw. I think this one was in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, as well. So there's been a study done on Fortune 500 CEOs, and apparently over 58% of them are over 6 feet tall, which is okay. They're over 6 feet tall. But when you compare that to the average number of people in America that are over 6 feet tall, which is around 14%, that stat becomes to look very crazy. So that means that if you're tall, you have a pretty good chance of becoming a CEO just because you're tall. But it also means that you're making hiring decisions for such an important position, probably the most important position in a company, and something like height is affecting that decision, and it's affecting it a lot. And of course, the last one, I don't think it seems unfamiliar to anyone, but there was a recent study that I was looking at, from developers all around the world, and apparently 91% of them identified as male. And that's a staggeringly high number, considering all the efforts done to get everyone to participate in STEM courses and kind of participate in the industry. But that number is still staggering high. And this report was actually in 2021. So it's not like something was done like a decade ago. So these numbers show that if you look at the results, you're still seeing challenges with recruitment, even with everything that has been invested technology-wise. And that's what we want to, that's also part of our focus here today, which is, okay, wait a second, aren't we building all these tools? What happened to all this AI? What happened to all these ATSs, all sorts of different tools that are supposed to help companies, recruiters, even job seekers, make better decisions? Actually, the industry is massive. Look at the size of that number. That's how much money has been invested just in HR technology. And there's all sorts of tools out there. We use a lot of them. We use tools for vetting candidates, which means basically, giving them a test, giving them a challenge to do. It's got recorded videos. It's got, a coding aspect. It's scored automatically. We get to review the videos. It's sent to different people on our team. They send their feedback without seeing each other's feedback. And we have a standardized rubric of how we score that and all that fun stuff. There's also chatbots. So a lot of times when you're applying to jobs, if you're texting someone or emailing them even, or on social media, you're most likely engaging with a bot. It's pretty common these days, and actually we use it as well. Like our bot can tell, it uses email, and if you respond back to it and you're not interested in the position, it'll tell you, okay, this candidate is not interested. Don't bug them for a while. Let's talk to someone else. or in matching. There's a lot of talk about ATSs scanning resumes and taking, taking the sentiment, taking the kind of the gist of your work experience and matching it against a job description. Yes, there's a lot of different tools out there to do this, whether they're embedded in the ATS systems and products that companies use, or whether they're third-party service providers. There's so many solutions out there for this. And there's even tools to remove bias. There's tools that kind of hide your information so that companies cannot see you, or even help recruiters write job descriptions that are more inclusive. We're actually working on some of this stuff as well ourselves. So for example, for removing bias, we're working on ways to showcase profiles in a way that companies see, or recruiters, hiring managers see information that is actually relevant to make that first initial judgment, and kind of decipher that, or turn it into those valuable insights, instead of just looking at the signals, which is like, what company did you work at? What school did you go to? Where do you live? What's your ethnicity? All that kind of stuff. That will, even if you're trained to ignore it, you still can. It's going to influence your decisions. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where I can completely sense the influence of someone's background on the decision that a team is making on whether to move forward with them or not. And with matching as well, we've been tackling this problem as well. How do we match candidates to clients? We're actually working with this with a couple of developers on our team as well, to figure out, okay, what are the best ways to match people? How do you score them? What metrics do you, because you have to make a decision. I mean, yes, you got to make a decision, but how do you make that decision fair? How do you make that decision in a way that is in the best interest of the candidate and the company that's looking to hire them? And you're doing basically a good match. You're making that good match. So you're using all these tools and technologies, but they're not really fixing the problem necessarily. I mean, they can in certain circumstances, but there's some inherent problems here that kind of stop them from becoming 100% effective. Obviously, because, well, first of all, any machine that works, I'm talking about software as well, when I say machine, needs a lot of data to make any kind of decisions, right? So if you're, and an example of that is, okay, let's say I want to set up a process for my company and I want to make hiring decisions. I want to make informed, bias-free hiring decisions. I'm not going to have enough data to do that. So I'm going to have to rely on other people's data to do that. And then there's a whole bunch of other concerns that come into play. What about data privacy? What about security? Where does this company get this data from? And who is actually accessing that data? How are they analyzing it? And what kind of conclusion are they coming to? What does that look like? So there's so many questions here, and it's hard to build models that work on small scales of data. It's actually kind of impossible to make it work. So you need a lot of data. And even if you, and when you have that data, there's also the model, or the algorithm, or whatever you call it, which has the challenges of, well, first of all, it can only look at what's happened before. So it's hard for it to come to any predictions without having a tremendous amount of data. And also, even if it has that data, it's only acting based on what kind of data you fed into it. And then there's also the biases of the creators, right? So there's a whole chapter there to unlock. Like, if I'm creating a system, and we're actually dealing with this as well. Like, okay, so we've chosen to focus on designing a system that's really custom to bringing tech talent from around the world to Canada. We've kind of narrowed down our scope. It's focused mainly on, at the beginning at least, on software engineering roles. And we're kind of really narrowing down that scope to make sure that, okay, we have a problem set that we can really focus on and have a customized solution for, because it's really hard to solve this without having bias. And we have to consider all sorts of different scenarios that we should have firsthand knowledge of if we're designing this model. And imagine if you're someone who's designing this and you're looking at practices from, I don't know, maybe bigger corporations or different companies, then who knows what kind of what you're modeling against. And then there's there's a whole lot to uncover there. So machines, humans, both are biased, and there's no stopping that. That's okay. We have to work with that. That's what we have. And then there's the changing nature of work. I was reading this interesting report from Deloitte, their Global Talent Trends 2021 report. Actually, they were talking about an interesting concept for me: super teams. So, for example, clusters of teams kind of getting together, solving problems. We actually had that experience as well in Global Skills Hub. We got our team together, created all sorts of interesting solutions for problems that came during the pandemic, and this really showed itself during these times. And now they're combining these super teams with power of AI and all sorts of different tools that can plug into them, and kind of creating these super teams. So the world is looking at talent in a different way, and this is one of the trends that's been predicted. And also, I think another thing that has really surfaced is looking at global problems and the solutions that they require. I think those global problems are inherently looking for people of diversity, of different ways of thinking, to come together and be able to solve them, hopefully in those super teams. And then I think there's also other factors that play into it as well. Like, for example, how the shift to remote has been accelerated like crazy. And there's a lot of talk about, is it going to stay? Is it going to become hybrid? Is it going to go back? Doesn't matter. It's something that has been going on for a long time, way before the pandemic. I think I've been working remotely for like 6-7 years now. It's not something that has just kind of emerged and it's going to disappear. It's something that a lot of people are expecting from their work relationship, and also work is becoming more independent. People are becoming kind of like these silos. Even though they're participating in superpower teams, they have these strengths and they're plugging it into different projects. Maybe they're doing a side gig, maybe they're running a podcast or a YouTube channel, maybe they're writing a book, maybe they're consulting, maybe they're building a little product on the side. And alongside their kind of day job. So people are taking those skills and strengths and applying it and plugging it into different projects. And we have to really consider this when we're thinking about how we're going to tackle our problems with recruiting and with finding talent. And I really think teams are missing out. I think great teams, I see them every day. We talk to them, and I feel like they're amazing teams, great people, well-intentioned, of course, but I think there's still a lot that we can do to help them and get them to the place they need to be with the right kind of talent. And I think there's a bunch of questions that I feel are important. Teams should be asking themselves: where are you actually sourcing your talent? How are you assessing them? How are you really matching them to opportunities? And of course, how well are you integrating? You've gone through all this hassle and you've given an offer to an incredibly talented person. And how are you integrating them into your team? We've had a lot of experiences with candidates dropping in all sorts of different parts of this funnel when we explore this with our clients. And I think each of these really contribute to the end result in a significant way. And I think there is ways to solve this. I think we need to rethink how we're looking at talent pipelines. That's kind of how I like to describe it. Pipelines of talent coming in, plugging into your teams, and kind of bringing that flow of energy, of experience, and plugging it into where you need it to happen. And work is becoming more and more fluid. You have to be really good at building these pipelines. You can't just post a job and expect people to apply or just go headhunt them. I think these models are slowly becoming extinct, and we need to think of new ways of looking at talent. And I do have some strategies. It's not all about talking about the problems. I think the first place to start is, okay, if you're talking about, I want diverse, world-class talent, why not start from the top? Build diversity from the top of your funnel. Why limit your pool? There's no reason for you to do that. And I think that's actually quite a simple concept, quite a simple, easy fix. You don't need to, change much. You just need to change where you're looking. You don't need to really fundamentally change anything else. Even if you don't do anything else and you just focus on building diversity from the top of your funnel, actually looking for talent in different places. All right, everyone's hunting for talent in Toronto. Why don't you start looking elsewhere? Keep your hunting in that local area as well, but open your eyes to other parts of the world. You're going to be surprised at the incredible amount of smart, talented, hardworking, amazing people you're gonna come across. I think the other part that's equally important is how you're actually measuring skills and not relying too much on your gut feel. I've read horrendous feedback pieces that our team gives back to me. And when I say horrendous, I mean it's horrendous to me because I feel like, okay, it kind of shakes me, and I'm like, okay, why are you rejecting a candidate because it was hard for you to communicate with them because of their accent, even though you feel like they were technically good. These kind of examples really shake me, and this is not coming from like bad teams. It's coming from good teams, and that's why it hurts. I think you need to be really clear, intentional about the attributes that you're looking to measure in candidates, and not just look for signals. You need to look beyond the signals. You need to also actually measure them and keep score of it. Common best practice, I think, especially for, if you're looking at top tier recruiting, if you're looking at executive search firms, you usually have like certain metrics owned by certain people on your team, and you have people take ownership of those metrics. So for example, if I'm looking at problem solving skills, there's one person on our team, or maybe a group of people on our team that take ownership of that, and they maybe have a separate interview and measure that and kind of give us feedback. And we narrow it down to a couple, not too many points, and we really become intentional and robust about how we're measuring that. That really helps remove bias, really helps you make good decisions. And I think there's also a lot of technology and tools out there that help you do that. So, for example, removing, bias creating indicators that kind of are present on someone's resume right from the start, and interviewing them after you've kind of, and you can have access to that information, of course, but maybe after you've at least had like one round of interview with them, and you've already kind of assessed that, okay, this could be a good candidate, you've invested some time, not just rejecting them because you see something on their resume. Another topic that I think Yusuf, who might be still on this call, our CEO, also loves to talk about, and I really love it when he talks about this, is focusing more. And this word culture fit really kind of doesn't make too much sense to me, to be honest. I think what we really want is not culture fit, because if you're looking for culture fit, that means that you're only hiring people that look like you, think like you. I don't know what you're looking for, but you're looking for something that is a cultural fit. You're not even talking about skill, you're talking about culture. And if you mean work culture, okay, yes, I get that. Like if you're talking about work style, if you're talking about communication skills, that's not really culture fit, that's more of a skill. And that's why I think the word culture fit is kind of a cop-out. You kind of box a lot of different traits that you could be measuring, and you put it into a box called culture fit, and then you use that as an excuse to reject candidates. And I think that's just a very bad idea. I think you should be intentional about what you're measuring, and you should be actually looking for people to add culture to your team, bring in different ways of thinking, and focusing on what's important. And I see a lot of teams actually over-indexing on red flags, things that they consider are red flags, like hopping from jobs or things like that. You have to be really careful with these things. You might be missing out on great talent, and you should be matching and optimizing for candidate strengths, not just trying to reject people. That's the nature of recruitment. I understand that. But I think that's where also, if you're doing what everyone else is doing, you're also missing out on opportunities. And another challenge I see, which kind of goes back to that integration part, is around how you finally try to get that candidate to stick to your team. And that really kind of starts showing itself in the offer stage when you start negotiating with candidates, the way you're looking at them, things like, well, you're kind of, you're going to come here, but maybe, your salary expectations should be adjusted to what you're used to. or giving you a benefit by just bringing you to Canada, and that's actually worth a lot of money and all sorts of stuff like that. So you have to be careful with these things, and you have to understand what a candidate goes through, what kind of things and challenges, what kind of challenges do they face, what causes stress for them, and you have to be proactive in addressing them. Could be simple things. Hey, I'm worried about where my kid's going to go to school. Where do I find a place? I have to give a notice to my company. When can I get my work permit done? Who's taking care of it? Can I get notified? There's simple things, or if you're hiring remote, I think you really need to be clear about what that means. Is this someone external kind of plugging in and taking over some of the leftover work in your team? Or is this person really integrating into your team? And if that's the case, you really need to be prepared for this. It's not that easy getting someone onboarded remotely. You need to think it through, especially if you're not used to having remote talent on your team, and if your team has just kind of went this direction after the pandemic. And I think a simple strategy here is assign a buddy, a mentor, even depending on the level of the candidate. You might want to call it something differently. But you want to assign someone and make sure that they're taken care of. And that's actually something that we've learned a lot is that someone needs to be there to take care of those, at least the first few months, just kind of those first challenges that come up. If there's someone there for you to talk to and get some reassurance, even maybe help point you in the right direction, makes a world of a difference. And I think that's how you can get really good talent to stay in your company and not leave for another, for a better company after 6 months, a year, because they're like, okay, you guys never really kind of got me to stick. And last but not least, I mean, I've been ranting on. I want to keep this really short, but I think there's a lot here, and I think just being aware of this, I think, is super helpful for candidates. Just understanding what does recruitment look like in companies. I think that should help you navigate the process. But if I were to really, really, really simplify and narrow down what I think are areas that you should start with if you're looking to maximize your chances of breaking into this market. So if you're already in it, then you kind of know how the game is played and you probably have a good shot of continuing. But if you're changing careers, coming from another part of the world, or if you're just starting off, you're kind of in a junior position, I think these tips might help you. Number one, I think, is positioning yourself. And the most important thing is, how do you position yourself to maximize your opportunities, especially if you feel like you're at a disadvantage? I would say, first and foremost, ask for referrals, find referrals. This could be, if you can't find referrals, find a recruiter that is specialized in the area that you're working in and kind of the location or the type of companies that you want to join, and work with them, because it's just the number one way that companies find talent. It's either through referrals or recruiters, and it's just the way it works. So get those, especially for junior positions. I also think we've had a few discussions about this on different with different experts as well. But I think by far the most interesting piece of advice that I've heard for candidates that are kind of transitioning or in kind of a disadvantaged position is to really focus on your work samples. Don't go too crazy on your resume. Just have a solid resume. Everything's pretty clear, straightforward. And you don't need to really worry too much about, okay, is it going to pass an ATS or not? Actually, I've included a little tool that one of our buddy competitors has built in Europe that can actually help your tech resume become more ATS friendly. It's at the end of the slide, but don't worry about it too much and focus on work samples, showcasing your work, participate in projects, partner up with different people, look for mentors. This is the way you bring in, you kind of position yourself. And this is to get the interview. Once you have the interview, there's basically two things you got to do. You got to make sure your communication skills are solid. And that's just basic. You take any negotiation course, any speech course, anything that kind of helps you really communicate well. And I'm talking written and verbal. Just show that you're professional and you're solid in your communication skills. I think that's something that easily eliminates candidates right off the bat. And sometimes, you think that it's about your experience. It's not. It's a lot of times just about you're not good at communicating. You don't look, whether it's hard for you to communicate, which is mostly because you're nervous, or because you just haven't had enough practice. And sometimes you need to work on that. And of course, technical interviews. I mean, if you're applying for a technical role, please practice, right? You're going to have to get warmed up and make sure that you're kind of aware of different styles, and because companies are going to do it anyway. It's not up to you. Everyone's going to have those interviews in place, and there's so many different types. Just be familiar with them, have a bit of practice, and it'll go a long way in getting you results. And at the end of it, patience, perseverance. We've seen so many candidates. We've worked with candidates that have been with us for maybe 2 years in our community and finally found an amazing opportunity. We've seen so many success stories that I cannot imagine a scenario where it's like, okay, there's no opportunity for you. There's always an opportunity, a good one for you. It's waiting out there. You just have to be patient. You just have to continue with the process. And actually, I want to, before we jump into questions and stuff, I wanted to leave you with a 3-minute video of a candidate that we've had the pleasure of working with. I think she joined we got her first job maybe around 2 years ago, I think. And now she's very successful. I think she's made so many people proud, and us as well. And I just wanted to share her story. It's a 3-minute video. Enjoy it, and we'll get back to questions after that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mo. All right. Give me 1 second. I will pull that video up right now.
Sure. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, anyone, please feel free to submit it.
All right.
In Pakistan, I started off as a software engineer. I was probably the first female to be a senior engineer. That was a very big deal over there, and people were like, seriously? I was like, yeah, seriously, even I don't know. So I knew I was at a good place, but I was also feeling weird that what after it? When Global Skills email came in, they connected with me with a company, I got an interview, but what next? 45 documents almost were included to get my work permit. This opportunity kicks in and you just cannot let it go.
Finally made it through? Finally made it. We were waiting for you from over there.
Yeah. When I finally made it, it was like unbelievable.
How are you?
Hi, I'm Erica. Nice to meet you.
When you come to a new place, you always seem like everybody is noticing you. At times, when I came over here, I was very embarrassed. When you are completely alone and starting from scratch, you feel like alien at times. Like you're so reserved. What if I don't understand? What if they train too quick or too slow, or they don't know what I know before? Is the work very different? Will I be utilizing my 4 years knowledge in the proper way? Yes or no? Or, I don't know. I have no idea how will I make the most use of my knowledge and everything. I had 100 of questions in my mind. Which team, which technology, what it's gonna be, how I'm gonna work. Then in my language, Urdu, 2 people talked to me. That was the first day, and I'm like, things are different, They talk to me in my language. It's very important, First question that people ask you, it's like, where are you from? But I can also ask in the back, where are you from? Because everybody is from somewhere. They have something to add to my knowledge. You don't feel alone. It's like equal. Slowly, everything settles down. That's what I learned. The moment I actually shifted to my own place, things totally changed. After a while, you don't like travel with your heads up watching all the Toronto buildings, because I'm not a tourist over here. I am accepting Canada as a home now. So for home, it's important to do stuff which you are also comfortable in. I felt like I finally have a life. These are little things, but they kind of matter a lot.
Thank you for that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I love that video. So I guess I should take questions.
Yeah, we can, let's have a look in the chat. Also, if anyone has a question they'd like to come off of mute or on camera to ask, you're welcome to do that as well. If you'd like to use the raised hand reaction, just to let us know, we will hand the floor over to you. Just taking a quick look at the chat, there's a few comments and questions. So a little while ago, Remy asked, where are some areas to look for talent?
Great question. That's a great question. Depends on who you're looking for, what kind of talent you're looking for. But if I were to overgeneralize that response, I would say there's talent in all sorts of different clusters around the world. Some of the more active ones, which are usually because there's some kind of global activity happening there. So, for example, in Lagos, Nigeria is a hotspot for us where we find a lot of great talent. Brazil as well. And in Middle East, we see a lot of great talent in Pakistan, in Iran. India obviously has a tremendous amount of great talent. We work with a lot of candidates from Eastern Europe, even Russia. And these are just names that come to my mind. But to be honest, there's great talent everywhere. We've seen it in the most unlikely places, or places that at least we didn't think we should be looking. So yes, I think there's just so many places you can be looking for, but it really depends on what kind of candidate you're looking for.
Great. Okay, and let's see, any other questions? Zim, have you seen any there you want to bring forward?
Yeah, we've got a question from Jen. Mm-hmm. How can we tell if AI is being biased against us when we're applying for jobs?
It's a great question. You can't. It's not something that you interact with. It's you apply to a job, your resume gets sent into the database of whatever software they're using, and that database has a model that it runs on your information. It's literally impossible for you to know that. Like, I wouldn't even know, like, what are they running? I don't know. What model are they using? What software are they using? Are they using any internal data, or are they just basing it off of like industry benchmarks and whatever the model that is providing? Like, maybe usually bigger companies might have a lot of internal data because they've been around for a long time and they've had a tremendous amount of hires. So in those cases, I think you're probably actually better off because you're being compared to at least other people that have performed well in that company. And if you're being rejected, because statistically you have a lower chance of being successful in that company, based on history of performance, doesn't mean that it's fair or not, but it's just the way it is. So there isn't really any way for you to tell if you are being assessed. My guess would be 90% of the time you are, to an extent. Doesn't mean that you're going to be at a disadvantage though necessarily, because a lot of these models are based on really simple stuff. They just kind of check what you've done in terms of your work history, what keywords you have, how long you've worked in each position, and they kind of with that it's pretty easy to figure out if they're, for example, if their metric is that they're looking for someone with 3 years of experience working with JavaScript or maybe a specific framework like React.js, okay, then that means that you either have that or if you don't. And if you don't and it's not on your resume, whether it's an AI or a recruiter, they're going to get rejected. So that's what most AI tools focus on. So if you have I think there are certain things that can bump your results, which could be, making sure that you're including the right kind of information that is relevant to your position, you actually have experience with in there. For technology roles, I think it's very important to make sure you mention the technologies you work with. Don't overstuff your resume with keywords. Like you shouldn't be repeating a keyword unless it's like a different job. So if you work with a specific technology, like in your first job and then your second job as well, it's okay to mention that. And that's actually great. But don't have it like in a list on the top and then something on the side and then also within the text. And then you put like a thing at the bottom. You don't need to stuff it, but just make sure that what tools you've worked with, technology you've worked with, if you're applying for example, a technology role, that's something that's important. Actually, I'll share the slides, but at the end of it, there's a link to a tool that I like that kind of helps you with this a bit. Just kind of compares your resume to other resumes. It effectively works as what an ATS would do. Compares your resume against data in the industry to figure out, okay, are you looking like a good candidate or not, or kind of gives you a bit of a sense of where you stand. I'll share the link to that. It's called CV Compiler, actually, and you can take a look.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
We've got another question. Do you think culture fit is used as a form of gatekeeping?
Not all the time, but a lot of times, yes. I think it's just such a such an umbrella term, and you can fit anything into it. You can call anything culture. Anything that's especially in tech hiring, anything that's not a specific technology related skill or what we call a hard skill. If it falls into the soft skills category, or if it falls into behavior and all that kind of stuff, you can just kind of all label it into culture and say, okay, this candidate is not fitting into our culture. Depends on what companies are. If you're a company that says, I want to hire someone that I can have a beer with, then yeah, you got the wrong idea. If you have a specific value that you're looking for, you're like, okay, I'm looking to bring diverse minds into my team, and thinking differently is a cultural add that I can bring to the team. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that's something that's clear to define. And I think candidate can understand it as well. And actually, I would say you should probably be rejecting people that think too much like you. Because if you're trying to build a good team, you don't want people that are all thinking exactly the same. And to an extent, I think it really shows itself as well. And in the first conversations you're having with a company, you can really have a sense of whether you're being dealt with as an individual and kind of respected for what you're bringing to the team, or are you just kind of being looked at as someone to get something done, and you don't really have a place in that team. I think it's not that hard to get a sense of that. You just have to be very aware, and you have to have enough interviews under your belt to kind of get past that initial interview pleasing phase that you have, and you want to please your interviewer, and you're going nuts with this. Kind of after a few rounds and getting some rejections under your belt, you'll feel okay about this, and then you'll start to see what teams are really worth.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like if you keep surrounding yourself with people who think the same, then you get stuck in an echo chamber, essentially, right?
Exactly, and that goes back to our conversation as well, right? Like, so bias, that's also a breeding ground for all sorts of bad product decisions, bad team decisions. Especially if you're building something that's it's an important product, then you better have a diverse team, because you're affecting a lot of people, and you want to consider everyone's viewpoint and play it from their point of view. And
speaking of bias, can where an opening is posted create bias in the recruitment process?
Absolutely, it can. I mean, okay, there's the public kind of open channels that everyone's using to post jobs. But of course, there's also a lot of private communities, a lot of closed chat rooms, a lot of different groups between companies that, when a candidate is posted, there's recruiters go and kind of take them for their own, and there's all sorts of different channels for reaching out to candidates. And I think the way you post a job and where you post it can also affect even the language you use. Like there's been a whole lot of research on this, and in terms of what kind of language you should be using. If this is an example, but if you're looking for more female developers, one of the challenges we hear with all of our clients is that, okay, we don't get a lot of applicants. And I see this personally, and there's studies as well. It's like when I deal with developers that identify as female, a lot of them are a bit more hesitant, and this is overgeneralizing, of course, and this is probably wrong of me to do, but it's something that I've observed in my small sample size, which is I see a lot more resistance to apply to jobs that you may feel you're not qualified for, and sometimes you're mistaken because you misinterpret what are the actual requirements of the role and what are kind of nice to have skills, and you kind of feel like, oh, I have to have all of these to apply to the position, and no, you don't. You just have to really kind of pay attention to what that company's doing and what this job is about, and see which ones you're good at, and play your strengths, and go into the interview with confidence, and you'd be surprised at what opportunities open for you. And it seems like there's a bit of a discrepancy between, for example, male and female applicants here.
Yeah. Mo, it's interesting. I remember reading something related to this question. I think it was a Google study where they found that companies that were using Google Ads to recruit were more likely to be, the ads were more likely to be shown to men over women. So women weren't even seeing them in their interactions with the site, which I think is really interesting. So I think that's something recruiters might need to consider as well. It's not just your own recruitment practices, but the algorithms of the platforms that you're posting those openings to may also have to be examined. And I'm sure there's metrics that you can examine for breakdowns of the audience, but that might be something also that's embedding bias into the recruitment process. Absolutely, that's fascinating, and it makes a lot of sense to me because you're using a tool. This is where that's like the circle of this whole full circle of bias kind of plays back, right? You're trying to hire for diversity, but you're using a tool that has been developed probably by algorithms that very much struggle just because of the nature of how they operate, who's built them, right? And where they've been built and what they're optimized for. And you're using those to try to attract more diverse talent. That's just a flawed loop, I feel. But of course, there's smart ways to hack that. Of course, you might be able to figure this out pretty early on if you're someone who's, they're specialists in recruitment marketing and how they work on different ads and campaigns and stuff. I think it would be good advice to have a chat with them to figure out what are ways that you can actually bypass this, or maybe even use it to your advantage to get in front of the type of candidates that you really want to attract. And I'm not surprised that this is a challenge. Okay, let's have a look here.
We've got another question in the chat. How has COVID changed hiring processes for international candidates?
Well, I'm a bit biased because our process is really focused on a certain flow of talent at a certain level. But in general, I think what we see is a mix of good and bad things. So good things is that, okay, more companies are embracing remote, and by remote, I mean even having remote interview processes. So before the pandemic, we had companies that were like but wait a second, like we have to have the candidate into our office for the final interview. Can we fly them in? Like, why would you want to do that? Like, you have to spend so much money just to fly someone in to do the final interview. And now you don't see that, of course, anymore, because they're hiring even locally via Zoom. So that shift has been interesting. That's been a positive shift. A negative shift is obviously the challenges brought on by, so for international candidates, especially who are looking to relocate, challenges, obviously you've got a lot of paperwork to do before you actually get your visa. And offices that process that are, also closed in a lot of places in the world. So that creates a lot of delays. And at the beginning, also, it was like immigration in Canada was also a bit slow as well. Now they're doing much better, and that's not really the clog. The main issue is like offices closing and opening, and that's been the biggest barrier. And and also a third one that I wanted to add is really interesting for me is a lot of candidates are actually, because they're living with, they have their families and whoever they love close by, they're also rethinking how they want to work. Sometimes some of them are like, okay, I see a few candidates coming and saying, okay, I want to eventually maybe relocate, but I want to stay in where I am for like 6 months or maybe even 12 months because I'm worried about my family. I want to be close to them if anything happens. If they need my help, I want to be close by and I want to get my stuff in order. And I also maybe want to minimize the risks of travel if I'm traveling with family and stuff. So that has also had an impact as well. So it's an interesting events, but it is what it is.
I've got a question.
Sure.
We've talked a little bit about, you gave some strategies for applicants. What would you advise someone who might not meet the standard profile of a tech worker? Say if you're a BIPOC, female, queer, neurodivergent, people who are not well represented in the fields. I know in my own circle of friends, I've friends who have struggled to get hired, who fall into those identities because some of the screening practices seem to be counting them out for reasons unrelated to their abilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite a tough challenge because, well, first of all, the challenge is on both sides, and I think one is, okay, how do I approach a company in a way that really kind of eliminates the question of the questions about my identity, because the thing about bias is it's not something you can really control, right? It's the other person knows too much about this right off the bat. It's going to influence their decision. So there's different ways of looking at this. One is, okay, how do I fight the system and fix the system? Okay, that's a different fight, and that's a different battle. And if you want to go down that path, great, and I'm all for that. And we're actually trying to do that, within team structures. But if I were to give you practical advice, I would say, okay, I would go back to my I would stick back to my original tips, and I would say, okay, you definitely need a foot in the door. And to be honest, this is for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone except for people who already have an in because of whatever credentials or situation they have, let's call it. For everyone else, big population, you need a foot in the door, and the best way to do that is to find champions for yourself in a company. You'd be surprised at how supportive people are when you reach out to them and say, hey, look, I'm looking for an opportunity at this company. Can you please help me? Sometimes it gets you have to attempt it a few times to find the right person who really connects with you and has the time or the space of mind to really help you and dedicate some energy for this. But it makes a big difference. I think another strategy definitely is working with specialized, and I want to emphasize this, specialized recruiters that really know their stuff, that that are focused on their specific areas. Because if they can vet you and because usually companies trust specialized recruiters to give a bit of initial screen, to do that initial screening, right? Like same with our clients. So they kind of trust us to have that initial layer of screening. They have their own screening, of course, but they trust us for up to a point and up to a standard, and we have a bar of who we work with. And so if you find you know, a recruiter that you feel safe with, you feel like they understand you, you feel like they can represent you, and I would work with them. I would give that definitely a shot, and try to use that to your advantage. Yeah, I think that's and of course be prepared for when the interview comes, so that you're ready to take that opportunity if it shows itself, and you're not so you know, anxious and excited that you kind of lose it because you know you were too stressed to perform at your best. And it's, you know, even super senior developers, I've seen engineers who seem like, you know, they're super confident in everything. I've seen them, you know, flunk interviews. It happens to everyone. Don't sweat it. It's a situation. You might not even get a good vibe from the person who started the interview with you. That could set it off in the wrong direction. So don't take it too personally and move to the next one. I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I did. Said a lot.
You did. Yes, that was great. Okay, let's see. Are there any other questions in the chat? This has been really great conversation, Mo.
My pleasure.
Something that I'm personally a little bit concerned about in terms of the use of artificial intelligence for recruiting is around this whole idea of interviewing tools that use facial recognition software. I know it's particularly notorious for struggling with people of color. There's a great documentary, by the way, that I recently watched called Coded Bias, which delves into this topic. There's a lot of tools out there that claim to have the ability to judge candidates based on language or facial expressions or even enthusiasm. But, you know, studies are showing that this technology is not great. It's particularly bad at understanding female candidates, foreign accents, for example, people who may have different speech patterns. Is there a way to mitigate some of these problems? It seems to me that the problem is the data sets that the technology is being trained on, and how can we make sure that recruiters, or those not recruiters, but those producing these products are including enough a broader data set?
That's a big challenge. It's really there's two sides to this. I think one is are we really applying the right tool in the right place? A lot of times, especially with dealing with technology, I feel that the problem is that you might be even solving for the wrong problem, right? And your solution is just badly positioned, right? It's not targeting the right part of the process, or it's not targeting maybe even the right characteristics that it's measuring. And I feel like part of the problem can be solved there, where you kind of really sit down and think, okay, does this tool really have, like, we use a lot of different tools. We had a tool that we used, we were testing with, that you could actually call a phone number, it would interview you, and we gave it a couple of like questions, like actually a couple of traits, like problem solving skills or maybe perseverance or whatever, and it asks you questions, and then it followed up with other questions to probe into that, and then it could tell if you were answering, you know, correctly or not, and it could actually tell how good you are at communicating, how confident you are, and actually how good your English was, which is pretty interesting. But my question for that is, but what are you comparing this to, right? Because how do you like, my guess is, like, having been involved with building, like we're trying to build a product like that uses AI as well, for our matching of candidates to different companies. And one of the challenges that we're seeing is like, okay, but how do you get the data to do this? Like, where's that data? Are you using public data? And one of the challenges we had was like, okay, but if I look at, we said, okay, let's look at previous hires of a company. But if I look at previous hires of a company, if there's already bias there, who am I helping? Right? Like, I'm just looking at like who they hired before, and maybe they were biased until now. And maybe actually that's why they came to us, because they were looking for more diversity. And then you're basing it off of what you see there. So
I know there was
problem is big.
There's that famous Amazon example where their recruitment tool excluded all the female candidates because it had been trained on previous applicants or previous hires, and the majority of which had been men. So I think in the creation of these tools, that's something that needs to be considered. You're only as good as your data set.
Exactly. And you know what, like, I think there was a question in the chat I saw as well about like how AI plays a role in recruitment, and can it actually replace recruiters and decisions? I don't think it can. Recruitment is very, it's not a function. It's like saying you can replace sales with AI. You can enhance it. You can enrich the tool set and the data that a recruiter has in front of them. But if you're just relying on this piece of software to make a decision for you, at this point in time, at this point in history, with what we see in capabilities, I think you're definitely doing it wrong. I think there are great applications of AI that can help mitigate the process. And actually, one of the things that we've learned is that the tools that help us the most are the tools that kind of try and free up some of our time, and so that we can actually spend more time on building relationships with candidates. And that has actually been our motto for the past few months, is like, how do we maximize our time with candidates, right? But it seems like a lot of companies are going, and tools like that are going in the opposite direction, which is like, how do we spend less time with candidates and still hire them? So I'm just like, philosophically, I think they're just going down the wrong path. And I think they should just kind of change that direction a bit. And I think there's definitely good applications for that tool. Maybe in a live session where an interview, like an application I could think of is like, you're doing a live interview with someone, and maybe you don't have the presence of mind to measure every metric, right? And you use a tool that you're training, and maybe you're even inputting data live, or maybe post the session because it's recorded, and it's learning from your behavior, and you're trying to be, you think you have good judgment, then it could be helpful, I think. But just blindly trusting it and waiting for the results, I think it's just lazy. And I don't like it, sorry. Just not my thing. Yeah, but good. Yeah, really interesting stuff. I've been thinking, and there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. I also included a video from. Let me see if I can find. It's in the notes. Sorry, it's in the slide deck, and I'll share that with everyone as well. But it's a really interesting video by Annie Duke, actually, Thinking in Bets. She wrote a book, and she did a nice little talk in Google. I think it's about an hour or something long. I really recommend it. It's really eye-opening. She stumbled upon the world of poker and spent 20 years playing it, and then learned a ton about how humans think and make quick decisions. And there's a lot of talk about bias there as well. So it's pretty fascinating. I would definitely listen to it.
Great.
And I'd recommend it.
Great. I know you've compiled a short list of further reading that we will definitely send out to everyone who's registered for tonight's session. Let's see.
Yes, and I tried to kind of keep it, so it's not just further reading. I've recommended a book. I've recommended an interesting, really, report by Deloitte, the Human Capital Trends report. I've included actually even a test. It's an implicit association test by Harvard. There was an interesting one that kind of measures how you associate different like genders with different functions like science or humanities and stuff. There's a bunch of different interesting tests there. You'd be surprised at the results. I recommend people take it, and it's really interesting how they test you for bias. There's also that tool that I mentioned to help you make your resume tech ready. CV Compiler, I mentioned that, and also included the video by Annie Duke, Thinking in Bets. But there's also her book if you're interested. I haven't read it myself. I just watched the video, but it's really cool. I think people would enjoy it. So I try to kind of put a nice mix in there depending on what you're looking for. But yeah, that's it from me.
I'm just going to see if we can quickly paste some of those links into the chat for everyone. Okay. But we'll also send them out in an email following tonight's session. We're past our time, actually. That went by really quickly. So I want to thank everyone for your insightful questions, and to Moe, of course, for all the knowledge you shared on this topic with us this evening.
My pleasure, absolute pleasure. This stuff is my is my everyday. So I'm always open to chatting about this. If anyone wants to continue this discussion, if you have further questions, if you have interesting ideas, products you've worked on, or problems you're facing with your company or with your job search, feel free to reach out. I'll make sure some contact information for me is included in the post event stuff. And yep. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and listening to me rant for an hour and a half, I think. I don't know. A long time.
All right. James just posted all of our contact details in the chat. So feel free to take a look at that if you are interested in connecting with anyone after tonight's session. I do want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Our next Tech Talk will be taking place in September. We're going to take a little hiatus over the summer months, but we'll be back in September. We have some other events coming up you may be interested in. Our Coffee and Code meetup takes place this weekend. That's another great place to connect with other people working in the tech space. And then we have Newcomer Success Stories, which is another series we host in partnership with the city next Thursday night as well. And of course, you can find the registration and RSVP links for those at bramptonlibrary.ca. Zim, did you want to hop in with any other closing comments?
No, I think you covered the main stuff. Absolutely fantastic presentation, Mo. Really, really insightful. And you explained everything in a really clear, easy to understand format. So brilliant work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. Really enjoyed it. And I hope sometime we get to do one of these in person and maybe have a chat, and maybe I'll join your next one if it's possible to do in person. And I'd love to
absolutely
be part of the audience as well.
Yes, I'm hoping that we'll be able to transition back to some in-person events in the not too distant future. Okay, well, thank you so much for lending us your time and your knowledge this evening. Thank you for everyone for spending your Thursday evening with us. And with that, I think we'll call it, and we look forward to having you join us for our future events.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you all. Take care.